In a small town in Michigan, surrounded by picturesque lakes and green forests, lived Carl and Emily. They had a happy family with two children, 8-year-old Luke and 5-year-old Sophia. The couple seemed perfect. Carl worked for a local company, and Emily was a stay-at-home mom who devoted all her time to her children and household chores. The neighbors knew them as a friendly and caring family, and no one guessed what was behind their outward calm. Emily was a bright and attractive woman with a charisma that attracted the attention of men. At first, she took it as a common compliment, but soon this attention became her weakness. On one such day when Carl wasn't home, she met up with their neighbor named Jason. He was a widower and often dropped by for a cup of coffee. Their interaction started innocently, but over time grew into something more. One day while coming home from work, Carl noticed that his wife often smiled when she received messages on her phone. When he questioned it, Emily only brushed it off, saying she was chatting with her friends. Carl trusted her, suspecting nothing. But the same night he left for work, Emily met up with Jason again, and that was the beginning of a string of cheating. Over time, Emily instructed her fans on how to get away from Carl. "We have to be careful when he's home so he doesn't suspect anything." And indeed, she became adept at pretending to be the perfect wife. Carl believed that all he had around him was a caring mother of his children, not a woman who spent nights with other men. The cheating with the neighbors continued. Emily slept with Jason, then another neighbor, Ben, and soon there were three of them, each providing her with a moment of privacy and adrenaline. She led a double life, remaining a reliable wife and mother in Carl's eyes, while she truly enjoyed freedom and forbidden passion with the men who lived next door. It was several months before Carl began to notice changes in Emily's behavior. She often stayed late to meet her friends and sometimes came home smelling of other people's perfume. Instead of talking, she began hiding her phone and avoided deep conversations. All of this suggested thoughts he didn't want to elaborate on to the end, but his intuition didn't fool him. One day, after coming home from work, Carl noticed an open note with Jason's name on it lying on the table. That was the last straw for his patience. That same night, he started checking Emily's cell phone and saw correspondence with several men. Various explicit messages, words of love, and promises he never received. He was shocked. After paying off his hunches, he suddenly realized that his family, the one he loved so much, was on the brink of destruction. Through reading the messages and realizing the complete lie, Carl was on the verge of breaking up. He couldn't believe that his wife, the mother of his children, was sleeping with their neighbors, destroying everything that mattered. In that moment, his world came crashing down. He didn't know what to do, how to tell Emily, or how to explain to the kids what was going on. The next morning when Emily woke up, she noticed that Carl hadn't shown up for breakfast. He was sitting in his study with a grim face, completely immersed in his thoughts. Emily sensed that something was wrong, but decided not to bother him. That afternoon, however, Carl couldn't help himself. "Emily, we need to talk," he began, gathering his wits. "What's going on between you and Jason? And with everyone else?" There was bitterness in his voice, an equilibrium it didn't know how to hide. She turned sharply and saw his eyes full of pain and anger. "You don't understand. It's just what? I just can't believe you cheated on me with the neighbors while I was working and taking care of you and the kids." Carl couldn't help himself. As if in response to his accusations, feelings of guilt and shame came over Emily. She knew her actions were wrong, but instead of admitting her mistakes, she decided to attack. "You never gave me enough time. I didn't want this. You drove me to this on your own." This only increased Carl's anger. He realized that their relationship had reached the point of no return. "I can't live with a liar anymore," he said, pulling himself together. "I'll leave with the children." That same evening, he packed up the children's belongings and his own, and in silence, under the cover of night, he wheeled them out. Luke and Sophia were at a loss, but Carl told them they were going on a new adventure. He wouldn't explain to them the truth about what had happened to their mother, believing it was a heavy load they were too young for. They left Michigan and headed for Tennessee, where Carl had relatives. Life in the new town was challenging, but he was determined to create a safe and happy environment for the children. Every day he showed Luke and Sophia what a real family based on trust, love, and respect was all about. Emily, left behind in the city, tried to make a life for herself, but the beauty and freedom she had once sought quickly turned to loneliness. None of her neighbors wanted anything to do with her. Her reputation was ruined, and no one wanted to get involved with a woman who had torn her family apart. Carl, on the other hand, tried his best to be a good father. He worked on special projects to provide for his children and leave them a good inheritance. They played outside a lot, explored new places, and spent time together when they went to bed. Emily, on the other hand, only later began to realize the consequences of her actions. She tried to write to Carl, but he didn't answer. Every day, looking out the window, she felt the weight of what she had lost. As the summer came to an end, it became clear to her that the only way to forgive and rebuild was to start a new life. A few months later, Emily took that step. She moved to another town upstate, hoping to put the past behind her and make a fresh start. But there was still an unbearable weight in her heart. She realized it would take her years alone to heal the wounds caused by her mistakes. When Emily saw her old photos of herself with Carl and the children, she realized that no joyful moment could replace the happiness she had destroyed. She hoped that one day she could go back to them and apologize for her actions, but she knew it would be a hard road. After a few months, Carl and his children discovered a new opportunity, sooner rather than later, and their lives finally became clearer. They had absolutely never expected to have to face the past, but in time they learned to live without Emily, realizing that trust and love were jewels to be treasured. Weeks and months passed. This is how they lived. Carl built a new life, worked hard, paid attention to his children, and sought out new opportunities. He became an example for Luke and Sophia, showing them that even in the most difficult circumstances, it is possible to find hope and start over. Emily, for her part, realized that even though she had lost her family, her journey was not filled with hopelessness. She decided that time was what she needed to rebuild herself. They each found their own path, leaving their mistakes behind, but the lessons they learned stayed with them forever. Carl, living with his children, began a new page in his life, and Emily put sadness and regret behind her, determined to never again allow herself to forget the value of true love and intimacy.